Chido Mpemba and her panelists.
Okay, so now we shall begin with the Youth Perspectives panel. My name is Chido Mpemba. I am originally from Zimbabwe, and currently I'm the African Union Special Envoy on Youth, where I have the opportunity to represent the African demographic and the 55 governments that we have in Africa on everything youth-related and including for a sustainable future. So it's such an honor to be able to moderate this panel with amazing youth leaders. And if you may allow me at this point just to give a brief introduction to our panel. Now, bringing together diverse perspectives, such as what we shall hear from our youth today, will propel us to establish a foundation for identifying valuable lessons learned from the vibrant and innovative demographic who are at the forefront of change and working towards achieving equitable, thriving, and sustainable global futures. Young people continue to take on a leading role in influencing, advocating, and demanding for responsible climate behavior and stronger political will from governments and the private sector. Young leaders have raised awareness in their communities, promoted lifestyle changes and concrete solutions, as well as advocated for the rights of vulnerable groups, including indigenous people, who are often excluded from decision-making. A systematic change to enhance intergenerational solidarity is urgently required to address and remove inequalities and to tackle structural barriers to meaningful engagement, youth engagement, for sustainable future for all. Today we get to hear from an exceptional panel of young leaders who capture their perspectives on action, pathways forward, existing barriers, and proposals to overcome them. So I'm quite excited to have on this panel young leaders from across, I wouldn't say the continent, but globally, who will propel us today to ensure that we have a sustainable future, because what is a sustainable future without young people? The rising young people, the innovative young people that make up the largest demographic in most of parts of the world that we know. I'll start off this intervention with Marlén Garcia. If you may allow me just to briefly give you a bio on what she has been up to as a young leader. Marlén Garcia is an award-winning social and environmental activist. She's the executive director for Earth Uprising International, a nonprofit dedicated to empowering youth in the environmental movement. Garcia focuses on centering the voices and experiences of communities that are in the front lines of this climate crisis. She strongly believes that the voices of the most marginalized communities must be front and center when educating about and advocating for real climate change solutions. So now, Marlén, my question to you is, how can we best leverage the unique perspectives and energy for young people to address critical global challenges and achieve a just and sustainable future?
Yeah, that's a really good question that I think is very important. So I think Alexandra Villaseñor kind of trained me for this question, for this moment. The best way to support youth perspective and voices is by being a fan of the environmental youth movement. And what that means is we need to fund youth-led initiatives, amplify youth voices, and provide spaces for youth to narrate their climate stories. Funding right now, I would say, is probably the biggest one. Based on research from ClimateWorks, only youth climate-led initiatives account for 0.76% of funding provided by the world's largest climate funding foundations, which is very little, very limited. And a big part has to do with this, term called adultism that really captures the intergenerational relationships between adults and youth. And there's a lot that goes behind this word, but to kind of just, the one that really correlates with funding, with money, is this idea that, when we grow up, kids should sit or youth should sit somewhere else because the adults are talking, right? So we're kind of excluded from adult conversations, and it's because there's this authority difference where we're not responsible enough to maybe, be responsible for money. But truth be told, we're a lot wiser, a lot smarter than what we're preserved to be. And so it's very important that we provide funding for climate-led initiatives. We have so many brilliant ideas, which I'm sure my other panelists, my friends here, are going to talk about. And we have great solutions. We have the knowledge, the responsibility, the wisdom to really seek climate solutions and push forward the many ideas that we have in mind. So fund, amplify. If you have a big platform, invite us to these spaces, educational spaces. Let our voices be heard. Let our stories be told. And that's the best way you can support youth perspectives, voices, and ideas.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Marlene. And I totally agree with that. Amplify youth voices, fund youth climate initiatives. And that seems to come out a lot in a lot of conversations with young people. They'd like the initiatives to be funded. And not only that, as most of the times we're told that young people are not bankable, but we also need to look at how do we mitigate that? How do we train young people? If it's financial literacy, but how do we make sure that they're also able to manage the funds that are provided to them to be able to accelerate further their innovative solutions? Now with that, I'll move on to Kneyone Murray. Kneyone Murray from Trinidad and Tobago is a dynamic individual known for his accomplishments in entrepreneurship, art, renewable energy, project management, global sustainability. And he holds roles such as Global Ambassador for the Blue Planet Alliance, a Peace Boat US Youth for the SDG Scholar, and a Sustainable Ocean Alliance Young Ocean Leader, demonstrating his commitment to sustainable development. Now, Marlene mentioned that young people have brilliant ideas, and clearly looking at the wonderful work that you've done, this is very true. And I would like to ask Kneyone, further to that, what key experiences or initiatives from your work or activism exemplify the power of youth in driving positive change?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good morning to everyone. When I think of positive change, I want to start with why I started on my journey in renewables and sustainable development. I founded this company, Kneyone Energy, and the basis of Kneyone Energy is let's encourage youth engagement. Let's encourage creativity. I'm an abstract artist, self-taught, and I've always dreamed of trying to join the worlds of energy, sustainability, and art. How am I going to do this? So I started Kneyone Energy, and I'm like, how can I do positive change? Let's start with the youth. I started it, and I wanted to do my thesis in bioenergy. I implemented a small biodigester in a school. And I was like, okay, let the students deal with this. Let them be able to, interact with the system. If we have engagement of youth, they have to know what we're dealing with. They have to know what is bioenergy. How are we going to create new renewable energy using this little system? And it was DIY, by the way. It was made of a IBC container, and I fed it grass, and it created bioenergy, biofuels. I mean, art is another point that I'm really passionate about. And I had the opportunity this year to be on Peace Boat, thanks to Blue Planet Alliance, as well as Sustainable Ocean Alliance. And I was given the opportunity to do artivism. Now, artivism is the use of art to promote activism. Now, this was dear to my heart because I was like, oh, I'm getting to do art, guys. And then Emily, which is the person in charge of Peaceport US, she was like, okay, let's do activism with the youth. Because I was part of the Youth for SDGs program, right? Latin American Voyage. And we created this banner, let's stop deep sea mining. Sylvia is here today. You know, it was really a onus on her. And we created this sign, and everyone drew like a sea creature that we wouldn't normally see, because why are we dealing with deep sea mining if we have no idea what's below, you know? I mean, driving positive change is youth engagement. Let's make it fun, because the youth are the future, we are the driving, and then we have amazing people like Emily and Francois and Hank Rogers from Blue Planet that are encouraging us to do these things, you know, to follow our passions. So I feel like that's what will drive positive change. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Kneyone. That's very inspiring. And what I've taken from that is, let's encourage youth engagement. Let us encourage youth activism. And clearly it shows that looking at such best practices as young people across the globe, we can work together for a better and sustainable future. And one key aspect that also stood out for me is education. I think it's an element that's very important, because you spoke about, you know, being educated, and this passion grew from knowing more about what you could do, you know, leading towards a sustainable future. And I think that we need to look at that. How can we ensure that young people across the globe have education when it comes to climate change? How can we empower them? How can we build their capacities? How can we advocate, even at policy-making level, to make sure that even during, you know, school, this becomes compulsory for young people? I mean, just 2 weeks ago, we just came from the Africa Climate Summit, which was a summit where our Africa head of states, you know, convened and got together to come up with what they call the Nairobi Declaration and their common position for climate change. But on the silence of this, we saw young people coming together through an Africa Climate Assembly, which was attended by the president of Kenya, who's currently the Africa champion on climate change. And young people self-mobilized, self-organized to also come up with a declaration of their own in terms of what they would need our member states and policymakers to do towards climate change, with youth at the forefront and youth on the table. And there was a clear demonstration of climate activism. They're actually also young at UNGA, leading from that declaration that was 2 weeks ago, and which was presented to the President of Kenya, presented to the African Union chairperson, presented to myself under the Cabinet of the African Union as a special envoy on Youth for Africa. But that has also led to it being presented in the UN General Assembly, showing that when we come together as young people, there's so much that we're capable of doing. Now, looking at my time, let me continue with this. And last but not least, Rigoberto Amaya, who is a third culture individual born in the countryside of Panama, and through his experience abroad, he has developed a passion for cross-cultural exchange and recognition of the disparities in access to quality air, water, and natural resources. Now, with a background in bioproducts and biosystems engineering, has focused on sustainability and process and efficiency, and Amaya currently works with Panama National Secretariat of Energy, advancing the energy transition agenda through various projects such as digitalization, process optimization, and management of the UN Energy Compact's project lead. And clearly this shows so much innovation, Rigoberto. Not only that, but looking at that, you're very young and you've had these opportunities, and I believe that they've also created a platform to dialogue with across generations, co-designing and co-leadership. And with that, I'd like to find out what specific ways can intergenerational collaboration and co-leadership be fostered to ensure that youth perspectives are integral to global decision-making processes?
Yeah, thank you for the question, as well as thank you for the organizers and my fellow Earth activists for being here today. Thank you for your time. Just so I need to disclose this for my lawyer, I am here in representation of me as a person who cares, and in no way whatsoever I'm representing the National Secretary of Energy of Panama. So with that being said, I think what you touched on, youth perspective, is very important. It must be heard everywhere. And just to give you an idea of my perspective, I was born in 1997, just before the turn of the century. And 3 years after, the Millennium Development Goals were being created. When I was in high school, the Paris Agreement was being negotiated, and the Sustainable Development Goals were also being finalized. So when I was in high school, I thought, okay, this is real. I see value. I see where this is going. The world is understanding it. But since I graduated high school and to 2023, the world has changed dramatically. It has changed a lot in that short amount of time, and it's going to keep changing. So how do we bring together this time difference that we have believed, the so-called old tickers versus the young? Where do you draw the line of intergenerational when you would think? I think it doesn't really matter. Honestly, we have to understand collectively that the world that we're living in is ours. This blue planet, this tiny speck of dust, that's all we have. And we must learn how to all live within it together. And so when you talk about how we can motivate the youth to be involved in decision making, I think it has to go both ways. Both ways in the sense that both people from the decision making, the one who have historically had the power, who've had the experience, they have to include us in the teams that they're working on. The best teams are made with diverse individuals. I'm not talking about just where you're from, what your background is, but also obviously age. We have the energy, we have the passion, we have the ideas to pursue what we believe must be done in order to save the earth from this late stage capitalism / end of human civilization as we know it. So understanding that it doesn't matter if I don't really care, if I know I'm gonna be gone in a couple years, or if I don't have any legacy, any heritage. At the end of the day, we have all been together historically in this place. Our past is our future, and we only got the present to take action. So in that sense, we have to really understand that that's the only problem that we have to solve. We have to believe that it's solvable, that together we can get there, and we have to collaborate to get there. As young individuals, sometimes we tend to just go fast, to think, okay, I'll crash and then I'll get advice later. But it's always nice to have experience, have that voice that can guide us. Yes, we will crash, but we will have the support of our experienced individuals, because they're telling us which way we should go. We will make mistakes, but in any case, we will do it together. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for that. And now, this is a clear indication that we have youth at the table at the summit, and would love to continue this conversation. I mean, off-site, we have a number of young people that are in this room, and I believe it's an opportunity for us to network, to share ideas, and to see how we can take this further. I'm also quite glad that throughout the summit that young people are actually embedded even in the 10 must-haves, which is also very important. So thank you for having youth at the table as we conclude on this panel for this morning.